sorry, but Reba McEntire was last night, so for those of you clapping for her. I'm Tom Rooney, and I'm going to ask my son to come up and help me with the pledge, and we'll get started. Okay, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Tom Rooney, and in my 5th term in Congress, started off representing the East Coast all the way to Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, and then my district has kind of morphed into more of an agricultural and then West Coast district. So for those of you that I'm a new member of Congress to, it's an honor obviously to represent you in Washington. And I know that there's a lot going on up there on a daily basis, and so I thought it would be a good time after working with some of you over the last few days to hold a town hall here in Englewood. So, I know there are people here from the Indivisible group. I want to thank you for working with my office, the leadership of that group. And working with us so that we could get this done as quickly as possible. I'm not really going to go into a bio or a speech or anything like that. Hopefully a lot of you know who I am. I served in the Army. I went to the University of Florida for grad school, the University of Miami for law school, where I met my wife. Sean was born at West Point, where I taught constitutional and criminal law. My oldest son was born at Fort Hood, Texas, where I was a prosecutor and a captain in the Army, as was my wife. We were dual military. So obviously there's a lot that's important to me that I focus on in Washington, and by and large it's national security, but also agriculture because of my district. I have 9 counties, I've had 10. I think that I've represented over 15 or 16 counties since I've been in Congress for the last 10 years. Because of the way that my district has changed, but that's it. We're going to start. I just want to, there's no great science to this. Some people say that we should, have the questions pre-asked or whatever, but I just figure, I have 2 of my younger staffers. Where are they? That's Max. That's Ethan from Okeechobee. Max, Florida State, unfortunately. They're just going to work. We're going to go back and forth between Max and Ethan. They're not going to give up the microphone, but you can, have as much time as you need to ask the question, but just be mindful that other people want to ask questions too. So we're going to just go back and forth and try to answer as many questions as you have. I might not have the answer to every question, and in which case, also, if you're nervous or if you aren't really much for public speaking and don't want to get up and ask a question, I think that we have pamphlets and cards at each chair. So if you want to ask your question privately without having to stand up in front of a lot of people and do it, that's fine too. Just put your email there and hand it to one of these 2 guys, and we will answer it within the next week, I hope. So with that being said, we're gonna get started, and we're going to start with Ethan over here on my right. And Max, if you'll go, yeah. If you're on this side and you want Max's attention, just raise your hand and we'll go from there.
Michael Holston, Venice. Congressman, thank you for taking my question. First, I noticed in your handout that you are supporting an appropriations bill to preserve Florida waterways and help clean up the Everglades, which I commend. But on the other hand, you recently voted to repeal a rule that allows coal companies to dump toxic ash and sludge into waterways throughout coal country. To me, that's highly hypocritical. Would you care to explain?
Sure. If you didn't hear the question, it was about the environment and the efforts that we've made in our office with regard to the Everglades, the Caloosahatchee, and the St. Lucie waterway, the River of Grass, as you know, it's historically been called in Florida, versus a recent vote to peel back an Obama rule which determined the levels of toxicity, or some have said what the coal companies up north are able to do and not do. Look, we don't live in a perfect world, and we try to do the best that we can. That was quick. All right. Yeah. First of all, the vote was to just peel back a rule that the president did without Congress. That's number one. Number two, we are a country of laws based on the Constitution, with separation of powers and checks and balances between the several branches of government. And so when the president got frustrated with Congress because it was a Republican-led Congress, he said, I'm going to use my pen and my phone and I'm going to do things without you. No, that's not the way things are supposed to work. And what this rule was, I believe, overreach. Take, for instance, and let me just give you an example. Let me just give you an example, because it's a good question. And it's not to say that I want the coal companies dumping toxic chemicals into the water either. I hope you realize that I would appreciate, clean water as well. But when I was driving over here from Okeechobee this morning, you can't help but notice the miles and miles and acres of citrus groves and cow pastures. Under the Obama rule, every little pond or stream that these cows go to the bathroom in and drink out of or whatever has to be up to a level that is the same as drinking water. It's unsustainable for our farmers. Now, if you have that level of numeric nutrient in even cow ponds and what's considered navigable waters, then guess what? The farmers are going to go out of business. There's no way that they're going to be able to do that. Listen. This is fine. This is fine that we disagree with this. But if you don't want the farmers to be able to stay in business, and believe me, it is not easy. It's the same thing in Florida. It's totally the same thing. When you're talking about levels of toxicity in water, it is. It is exactly the same thing. Oh, by the way, we've gone down this road of not being able to sustain ourselves with energy in the past. If you want to talk about coal, and you want to talk about jobs in West Virginia and East and Western Pennsylvania, that's where my people come from. My people come from Western Pennsylvania. The steel mills have all closed. The coal mines are closing. And if we are not a country that's able to have our own energy or feed ourselves because the farmers are able to make a profit in agriculture, then guess what? We're at the behest of foreign countries. We've done this before. Just for a quick example, and then we'll get to Max. Just for a quick example, speaking of Babcock, people from Western PA may have remembered in the 70s when the steel mills were closing and the Pittsburgh Steelers were winning the Super Bowls. A lot of those people moved to North Carolina, to Florida, to various other states because there were no jobs left in Western PA and West Virginia. And so what happened was that foreign countries started dumping steel into this country, and it made it impossible for us to be able to compete with foreign markets. And then once they dumped the steel, just like other countries are doing with other products, and those big companies went out of business, guess what? They jack up the prices. So you gotta try to balance it. It's either we have this industry in this country and we're able to you know, keep those jobs and keep that energy and keep the agriculture and try to keep the water as suitable as possible, or you don't. I mean, it's not a perfect. I totally agree, but the president making it impossible for the coal miners to be able to exist at all. Okay, agree to disagree. Leah. Max. Guys, raise your hands.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rooney. Thank you for holding this meeting, first of all. We really appreciate it. I appreciate your family values. When we were at Venice, you said you were going to your son's game, and I thought that was really great, and we really appreciate that was his game. I hope you won. I'm an American with a pre-existing condition, and I'm very concerned that any ACA replacement will reduce my benefits. Can you promise me that you will vote against any replacement that will not guarantee that all Americans with pre-existing conditions will be able to get insurance at the same rate regardless of lapse in coverage? And will you also guarantee that you will not vote to repeal ACA without an immediate replacement?
This was shampoo. Well, that's the question of the day. That's what we're all here to talk about by and large, and I think that it's a great question, it's a fair question. So last week, you may, if you look at my Facebook page, you see that I do a week in review. Because of a lot of the things that we've heard about, a lot of the things that I've heard from you all, I co-sponsored a bill that would say that pre-existing conditions have to be part of whatever replacement we do. And also, I do believe, and I do agree with you, that it's really irresponsible for us to not have a replacement in place when we do our repeal. I think that it's only fair to you to be able to see what our ideas are before, guys. Okay. I think that it's only fair that you guys get to see what our ideas include before we repeal and then replace. So it's kind of like, and this is a terrible example, I keep saying this and nobody understands what I'm saying, but it's kind of like when you want to buy a new house, if the bank wants to see that you can sell your old house first, or I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but no. Okay, sorry. You know, just I think that it's important that we put our cards on the table and you can see what it is we're trying to do. And I'll get more into specifics with regard to that. But I do believe that people with pre-existing conditions should not be cut loose and should be included in what we do next. Just as a follow-up on that, somebody here asked when. Paul Ryan, who's our speaker, has... Try something. Okay, John Boehner. Oh, one green card back there, wow. Paul Ryan has said that he wants to get this done within 200 days. Now, let me just comment on that. And the reason why you may not have seen our replacement plan already. I think I voted to repeal Obamacare in the last 8 years like 50 times, I don't know. So, there's been replacements by various congressmen that are different than each other. And that's why it's never like the Republican replacement. Tom Price has had a replacement, Phil Rowe from Tennessee's had a replacement, Bill Fleming's had a replacement. I mean, all these bills have been proposed, and some of them I've signed on to. I think that there's a Republican Study Committee replacement that I like that's got some good things in there that I've co-sponsored. But this should show you that we're not even on the same page on our side of the aisle. I mean, some people think that we've talked about replacing the government subsidies with tax credits. Well, some people on the far right side of my party think that tax credits are nothing more than another entitlement or subsidy of a different name. So we're not even on the same page there. And the reason why you heard us say right after the election that we were going to do Obamacare repeal and replacement right away, and it hasn't happened, and now you see our speaker saying that it's not going to happen for 200 days, is because we're not even on the same page as a Republican conference yet. So I think that's a good thing that we are not rushing to just put something out there that we can't get all the consensus on, that we are trying. No, ma'am, we didn't have the White House. We didn't have 8 years. Let me explain to you something. There's a Congress and there's an executive branch. If you don't have both, you don't have a law. All right. Okay. Is your name Ron? Okay. We're going to give Ron. Ron's the head of the Indivisible, so Ron can just. Your card says. Okay. I'm sorry. I was trying to give you a compliment. Okay. What were you saying? I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
The Republican Congress had 6 years in which they tried to repeal Obamacare approximately 54 times. Assuming that you had been able to repeal it, you had nothing to replace it with. Why are you trying to repeal something for 6 years without having anything to replace it with? And now that you have a president who is on your side, you still don't have anything to replace it with. Why don't you just stop talking about repealing it and talk about fixing it?
I think that, Ron, because that we've taken this long in the first, part of this administration and have not proposed the repeal, we could do repeal with 51 votes in the Senate. We could do it tomorrow. The reason we're not doing it is because we are trying to get it right. You have. Maybe you're right about that. Maybe you're right about that. But to do any of the things that we're talking about, thinking that we think is a better way, we need 60. We can repeal with 51 votes, but to replace, we need 60. So clearly, we're not there yet. And we're not there with the Northeastern Republicans that might be a little bit more moderate versus the Southeastern Republicans that might be a little more conservative. We are not to the point where we think that we can pass what we believe is better. Now let me just say this, and this I believe to be fundamentally true, and if you don't, then we're just going to have to disagree. Obamacare is failing under its own weight.
No.
Come on guys, listen. Let me finish. In 6 of my 9 counties, we are down to 1 provider. That's one government mandated, 1 provider in 6 of my 9 counties, and in many states across this country, they're down to 1 provider. So you have government, let me finish, guys, let me finish. In these states where there's 1 provider for government mandated health care, there is no competition. When you have 1 person doing it, they can charge whatever they want. There's no competition, there's limited access, there's limited motivations for kids to even want to go to medical school because you're down to basically the nitty-gritty. And so we need more access, more competition, so prices can go down, and more affordable prescription drugs. And we need to have a system that covers pre-existing conditions, that allows kids that might be under their parents' plan to stay until they're 26. All these are ideas, but none of them have been agreed upon yet, and we don't have an agreement yet. And we're not doing anything, Ron, until we do. But listen, my dad asked me, and I asked this to the speaker. My dad is extremely conservative, so you'll excuse the sort of snarkiness of this comment. He says, Obamacare is failing. Wouldn't it look better for the Republicans if we just let it fail? Okay? And I said to him, this was my answer to him. I'm just like, Dad, I had this exact conversation with our speaker. And our speaker, whether you think this is Pollyannish or not, said this just to me. He said, that's not what we're hired to do. That's not governing. Our job is to fix the broken healthcare system. Exactly. Listen, Obamacare is about this high in sack of paper. There is no way that you're going to fix it. There's things in it that we should keep. That because Obamacare is a failure. Obamacare is a failure. Look. Ethan.
Thank you again for having this town meeting. It's, for us, it's really the heart of democracy, and we really appreciate it. In today's Herald Tribune, that's today, there's an article from the Associated Press about a recent survey that shows 7 out of every 10 people in America feel that we're losing our identity as a welcoming and open nation. And this conclusion is related to the increased polarization of political parties and ideologies. Now, a number of similar polls show the growing mistrust of Congress itself and other public institutions, even like our police, courts, and sometimes even our religious institutions. My question is there anything that we, as voting Americans, and you as our representative, can do about this growing phenomenon that is eroding the very trust that makes our life together as a society possible and functional?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's absolutely right. Whether you're Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal, I think that everything you just said there is true. And I think that it makes it extremely difficult to want to, a lot of people think that being a member of Congress is somehow us riding around in limos and I'm not looking for sympathy, but I think that trying to set an example and doing what you think is right, if you're talking about us as an institution in Congress, yeah, our approval rating is below Fidel Castro's, and he's dead. So it's not anything. I will say this: there is a phenomenon that we do in Congress that drives me crazy, and that's this sort of like self-deprecating. We shouldn't allow congressmen to do X, Y, and Z because we should be self-punishing because we're bad. We see that our approval rating is bad, and therefore we are going to exacerbate that by echoing that somehow in law. And I'll give you a perfect example. And this is something that we talk about a lot in this area of my district, and that's earmarks. And we stopped doing earmarks when in my second term, because there were a lot of bad apples. By a lot, I mean like 5 to 10 people that were doing things wrong. They were giving earmarks to private companies, and then those companies would be hosting fundraisers for them and giving them a kickback in that regard. And so we stopped doing earmarks because we said we, as your elected official, cannot control ourselves. So the first 2 years, if Manasota Key was losing sand on their beach and needed the Army Corps to come in to re-nourish the beach so the buildings wouldn't fall into the Gulf, I could tell the Army Corps, you need to do this and it needs to start tomorrow. Some of you may have been at our town hall in Manasota Key when we were talking about beach renourishment, and the Army Corps was there and they said that we're going to start a 3-year study. This is a place where buildings are falling into the Gulf. I don't think a 3-year study is going to make those people happy. So why can't I, as your elected official, you all pay tax dollars to the federal government, you send me, I'm sure most of you voted for me, you send me, hold on. You send me to Washington to represent you. And part of that representation is to say, hey, you know, my condo is falling into the ocean, or River Road is too narrow, or whatever. We need this fixed. And so I say, okay, you guys pay your federal tax dollars, you send me up to Washington, now it's my job to bring those federal tax dollars back to you. That's how it's supposed to work. The founding fathers said that, yes, they do. What'd you say? Okay. Guys, let me finish the question. The founding fathers put specifically in the Constitution that the Congress shall appropriate funds and collect taxes. So literally, the only two things that they say, the committees that Congress should be doing is collecting taxes and spending them back out. And then they specifically enumerate in Article 1, Section 8 what those things are supposed to be, like raising, supporting the navies and the post office and armies and stuff like that. So my point is this, is that if we keep going down that road, that it looks good for us to self-deprecate or to not allow us to represent you. Why? Because I can say to you when I'm running for re-election, I don't take earmarks. Aren't I great? And you're like, yeah, because that's gonna help with spending, right? Well, guess what? The piece of the pie that talks about annual spending is very minuscule, and it still gets spent by the executive branch, whether it's Obama or Trump or Bush or Clinton, whoever. They still spend that money. We haven't shrunk the pie. We're not spending less. The people that are deciding whether or not Minnesota Key gets renourished or River Road gets widened is some career Washington bureaucrat that is not accountable to you. I can only ask them to do this for you, and they can tell me to go jump in the Gulf. So this is a kind of an example of how we, for the sake of getting reelected, make ourselves look bad to say that, hey, we're not that bad, we're not even allowed to do earmarks anymore, but the people that really get hurt by doing this stuff is you. Go ahead.
Sir, I appreciate that, but the mistrust that's growing in our country is not due to earmarks.
It was a big deal 8 years ago.
Well, it is, but we now have an administration that is using alternative facts that exaggerate
Listen, you know, I think that President Trump has been in office for a little over a month. He hasn't? The difference between being in Washington, D.C. and reading the newspaper and being down here and listening to people is like night and day. I think that you just need to give this guy a chance. How can you... So we want Trump to fail, right? He's your president. Listen. Calm down. I think you should give him more than a month. Listen, he was elected president of the United States. He's been in office a month. The news media literally makes everything this guy does sound like it's the end of the world. Okay, let me ask you this. Do you not see that every week something comes up where the people on TV are like, this is going to be the end of Trump. I can't believe he did this. And literally, it's an impeachable offense, and the next week, they're on to something else. So, was it or was it not impeachable? We throw words around like impeachment after 30 days the same way they talked about President Obama, and it doesn't help. Okay, I think we got our next question. Hold on. Obviously, I have to talk about Russia. Unless you were going to ask about that. Okay. Just stand by. I'm going to right now. So I sit on the Intelligence Committee, which it's extremely sought after position, and we hear all of our country's secrets, and we get briefed on a daily basis by people like James Comey of the FBI on things like Russia. And everything that I believe from the briefings that I've gotten are that we have zero evidence that the Russian government and the Trump campaign coordinated in any way. This is according to all the evidence that we have. And the question that I ask you is that if you think that, do you know what RT is? What? Russian television, which is on most of your cable boxes. If you think, and if you watch Russian television for an hour, 55 minutes of it might be legitimate news, and there might be 5 minutes of it that's propaganda against America that is very, very well done on an intelligence level. But listen, if you think that from now on in the future, whether it's Russia or China or North Korea or whoever our enemies are, if you don't think that they're trying to influence our elections by propaganda, you are sadly mistaken. The only thing that we can do in the information age, the only thing that we can do, and this is what I ask Comey every time he testifies before our committee, is do we have any evidence that the Russians or anybody has actually hacked into our machines in each individual precinct? The answer to that is no, not at this time. Listen, Russian propaganda in our elections is going to be with us until the day that we die. She asks without raising her hand about a nonpartisan investigation. Or a prosecutor to prosecute a crime. You're going to love this answer, but my job on the Intelligence Committee is to investigate these exact issues. And I am on this committee to do the investigation with I'm trying to do my job. By being on this committee, it's actually the committee that's supposed to be investigating what you're asking about. If I felt like at any time that and by the way, the Intelligence Committee, there's no cameras, nothing is reported on it. We're not allowed to talk about what we do down there. It's about 5 floors underground, and I have to use my fingerprint to get in the door that's about this thick. And we hear from our spies and from the FBI about all the things that we're doing. And they're nonpartisan, or supposed to be nonpartisan, and our chairman, who's a Republican, and the ranking member, who's a Democrat, 99% of the time get along fine. Now, there are cracks, and there are some times where they disagree, but this is not the committee where partisanship is supposed to come out, and it usually doesn't. So let us do our job before you say, you're going to get an independent counselor or investigator who's one person. You remember how some people felt about Ken Starr. You're going to get one person rather than a bipartisan committee. There's like 20 of us on this committee. And we are going to go through the evidence and find out where it follows. Listen, I am the one. There's like 4 members of Congress that are Republican that are on a bill that says that no Russian sanctions shall be lifted until Congress approves of it. I'm one of 4 Republicans. Why do I feel that way? Because I believe that Vladimir Putin is a really bad guy. I think he's a bad actor. And I don't think that we should be cozying up. You know, we've tried this. President Bush looked into his eyes. President Obama said he'd have a little bit more flexibility after the election. We try this. Hillary Clinton had the reset button. We try this every 4 years. And every 4 years, Putin breaks our heart. It'd be great, listen, it would be great if the United States and Russia could go through a phase where we got along. But that is not what Putin is trying to do. Putin wants to return Russia to the USSR. All you have to do is go ask the former Eastern Bloc countries and countries like Georgia and Estonia, which I visited, which have statues of Ronald Reagan in their country. And I'm telling you, because you asked me the question and you're my constituents, I signed on to a bill to try to make sure that we don't get too cozy with Russians too fast. And I think that what bills I sponsor, by and large, speak to the way I feel. But with regard to this idea that there was coordination between Moscow and the Trump campaign, there is no evidence. That is what she asked. We'll get more Russia as we go.
Thank you for coming here today. Will you promise not to vote for any measure that lowers current Social Security payments to those receiving Social Security? And in connection with that, will you consider raising the current wage cap of $127,000 for withholding Social Security?
You said current, and so I think that that's the key. 20 months on my re-election. Yes. Are you going to run against me? Come on. All right. The question is with regard to Social Security and whether or not I am going to adjust the payments or up or down for payments for current recipients.
No.
Okay. I think that with this, I think that we've been pretty clear on our side of the aisle that we believe that people that are over 55, nothing should happen different. And the people that are under 55, like myself, unless, I'm 46 years old, there's not going to be Social Security for me when I get to the age of retirement. Can I answer the first question? No, he asked 2 questions. And I believe that if you all want your children and grandchildren to have the same retirement entitlements, I know a lot of people don't like that word, but that you have, that, listen, things cannot stay the status quo in this country with the way things are working with Social Security and Medicare. They can't. If you think that in 20 years, Medicare and Social Security are going to encompass 100% of our budget, you would be correct, according to every economic study out there. When people tell you that there's nothing wrong with Social Security or Medicare and that they're totally sustainable forever and ever, amen, they're lying to you. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, if you hate my guts or if you voted for me, I'm telling you the truth. If we do not fix our retirement programs now, and has nothing to do with people over 55. If we don't fix them now, I'm not getting Social Security. He sure is, you know what, not getting anything. And so we owe it to future generations to make sure. That's why we're sent to Washington, to make change and make a difference, so that those type of things that we all enjoy, or some of you all enjoy, are also enjoyed by future generations. Do you not want that for your kids and grandchildren? Are you kidding yourself to think that it's fine, that it can't? I think that it all has to be done at one time.
The question was, did you raise the cap? Take the money from the insurance companies. Give it back to the people.
Well, okay, I will consider that, but I'll also tell you this.
Mike for him.
I'll say it.
Social Security solvent for the extended time period. All you have to do is eliminate the cap.
Ron, I said I would think about it. Look, a lot of, because I might not agree with what you just said. I will look into it. I will look into it the way that you just proposed it. I'll also tell you this. I think that people that are at the upper end of the economic spectrum, some of you will love this. I think that people like my dad, who qualify for Medicare when he gets to be a certain age, it should be means tested. So people that don't need it, aren't draining the rest of the people that so we're going to have to do things to address our Social Security and Medicare, and it's not going to have any effect on people that are over 55. And I know that this was the third rail. We weren't even allowed to talk about this when I first got elected, especially in Florida. So there is no political upside for me to tell you that I think that if we don't change something now, in 15 to 20 years, there is no budget for the military, which maybe is good for some of you. There is no budget for roads or the infrastructure or anything. It's all Social Security and Medicare. We've seen this happen in other countries. We're starting to see this happen in some of our cities and states. It is going to bankrupt us. And if you don't think that that's true, then we are listening to the totally Ethan, Your Honor.
Congressman Rooney, thank you very much for...
Hold on just a second. If you disagree with me on that, just take a little bit of time later this afternoon and Google it and see if you think what I'm saying makes any sense with regard to that. If you listen to Nancy Pelosi and she says that there's nothing wrong with Social Security and Medicare, and you buy into that and you don't research it any more than that, then...
Ron, did you get your question answered? Did you get your question answered? Not satisfactorily? Give Ron the microphone. Yeah. Go ahead. Will you raise the cap?
Look,
Will you raise the cap?
Look, we will look into it. I will look into it. No, I haven't. We haven't talked about that at all. At all. Come on, next question. It's not on.
Are we over here? Tom, we're over here.
What?
Tom, we
I thought we were just here.
well, he was deferred. You go to that.
All right, you're next.
Thank you for agreeing to. Let's talk about Trump's tweets for a minute. Now, after he accused former President Obama of tapping phones at Trump Tower without evidence over the weekend, Mr. Trump demanded that his accusations become part of the congressional investigation into Russian contacts with the Trump campaign. Would you agree that now is the time for a special prosecutor or a select blue ribbon committee of Congress to look into this matter?
The question was with regard to the recent tweets on Trump Tower being wiretapped. And then if I would request a special prosecutor and a blue ribbon committee well, I would say this. You have a blue ribbon committee and I sit on it already. So your congressman is on the committee that investigates this. With regard to a special prosecutor, you usually request a special prosecutor when you have evidence of a crime. Now, I will concede one point to you. What the president is alleging is extremely serious. He is basically saying that the preceding president of the United States, and I'm not sure from the tweet whether or not he was saying he was illegally wiretapped or legally wiretapped. Here's how it works. If somebody in the Trump Tower or Trump had a wiretap on him, the only way that can happen is via a warrant through the FISA court that he was colluding somehow with the foreign government for some reason, and that there was evidence to show that we need to listen in on this phone call, right? So that is with regard to the legal way. And in which case, Mr. Comey will come to our committee and he will say, when asked the question by the Democratic side of the aisle, Adam Schiff, is it true that you got a FISA warrant to listen to anybody at Trump Tower, whether it's Trump or one of his underlings? And if it's true, then we have a paper trail. Then we're actually looking at somebody had probable cause to listen to that, and we will find out why. We will follow the evidence where it leads us. Now, on the other hand, if he didn't have a warrant, then basically Trump is saying that the president illegally wiretapped Trump Tower. I don't know yet. Right, and the FBI director, well, I want to listen to him when he comes in. He's coming tomorrow in front of our committee, and we're going to ask him this. What I hear in the news, I always take with a grain of salt. So, if we will follow this evidence where it leads us, but it's a very serious charge, what he alleges, and you know, I think that this is a bigger deal than a lot of people are saying, because there was either a warrant that was based on probable cause to say, according to the president's tweet, that somebody in the White House or somebody in Trump Tower had probable cause that they were talking with our enemies, or he is alleging that a former president was wiretapping him illegally. Either way, it's a big deal. Okay, option 3, there was no wiretap at all. Max.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here today. It's a tough situation you're in, but that comes with the territory. I have a question with you with regards to the Windfall Elimination Act. And what are you planning to, the Windfall Elimination Act? Are you familiar with that?
The what?
Windfall Elimination Act.
Windfall Elimination Act?
That is when your Social Security is reduced if you collect a government pension along with a private pension. So I work in the private sector as well as I get a government pension, as does my girlfriend. And because we collect government pensions, our Social Security is reduced by 60%. Now, talking about Social Security, I will let you inform you that I'm also an immigrant. I'm from the Netherlands and came here via Canada. Now in the Netherlands, if you want to look at a good model for Social Security, I suggest you do that, because their Social Security system is actuarially sound and has a huge surplus. And that would happen the same here if people's money was invested rather than people working paying for the ones that are leaving. Thank you.
With regard to the first part of your question, I don't agree that you should be, that's your money. And so, I think that you've earned that money, and, whether or not you're getting it from private side too, I believe Look, we can have a whole discussion about whether or not the model in the Netherlands or Sweden or Ireland is a model that could work here for any of the things that we do. I think that that's way too simplistic to say that a small country the size of Rhode Island or even New Jersey, where you basically have, you know, the amount of people that they have there versus what we have here, and the diversity that we have here, and you know, the different industries and everything else, to try to say that some country that's a socialist country in Europe that seems to work well could work here, I think is kind of naive. Ethan. A woman. Yeah. What's wrong with you guys?
Speaking for the women in the room, again, thank you for having this town hall. President Trump has refused to release his tax returns. Even though all of his predecessors have done so. There isn't any law saying that he absolutely has to do this, but it has been tradition that presidents have released their taxes. Without that or similar disclosures, the American people have no way of knowing if there are any financial connections between our president and any foreign government. We're talking about Russia, but any foreign government. Are you in favor of conducting a congressional investigation into potential conflicts of interest?
It's amazing I win my election by 20 points every time. But I would have thought. I would have thought that he would have had to have released his taxes. As just somebody that's grown up following politics my whole life, you seem to think that that's something that everybody has to do. I certainly know that my life is an open book because of my job, and I knew that that was part of the, you know, part of the deal. And so when he didn't have to release his taxes because of the excuses that he gave, I was surprised that like as you said, that there's nothing by law that says you have to do that. And he won. And it didn't seem like people really cared about it. But if you were asking me that, look, it's passed, get over it. If you were asking me if I would support a bill that would say that people that are running for president in the future should have to release their taxes, I would support it. Oh, okay. What about now? I don't know that you're correct in what you assume, that with our FEC filings and everything that we have to do to run for office, it's different than your tax returns. But with our FEC filings, we have to notify any investments that we have, any dealings that I would have with Russia would certainly come out in my FEC report. So I don't know that that's true. Yeah, that is what I say.
It's the law, right? It's legal. Okay. You can say anything on that form.
Well, I think you have to be honest, right? So naive. Max. Hold on.
You just are making an assumption because you don't know what's in his taxes.
I don't.
So wouldn't it be helpful in putting a lot of this stuff to rest by knowing what's in there? And so we know he has connections or he doesn't.
I hear you, but the American people didn't care. You guys did.
We have a question over here for you, Tom.
Look, I would assume that if you run for president, you have to release your taxes. And I support the fact that you should. But the people didn't care. So, I know. He's president. I hear that. Did I wrong? Did I say I don't care? I did. You don't have to investigate his taxes. Why? It's not a law. It's not a law that you have to.
Tom, we have a question here in the back.
It's not a law.
I think this point was.
And I'm telling you that if somebody proposed a law saying that any president should have to release their taxes moving forward, I would vote for it. We are looking into that. They might be. We'll see. If they are, they are.
Hi. Sorry, getting hijacked a little bit here. I thought it was very interesting that you made a mortgage analogy previously. In my observation, since I've lived in Florida, the mortgage crisis was devastating here. There were many, many foreclosures. I used to live in Polk County, now I live in Sarasota County. There are many, many homes that are empty and waiting, and many, many people who could live in them but can't afford to live in them. And we continue to build more houses. So I'm deeply concerned about promises that Republicans have made to repeal protections that were put in place after the previous mortgage crisis. I'd like to know what your response is to that.
Yeah, obviously in my district there's probably the highest amount of foreclosures, well, in my last two districts, but I agree with you. I think that it's disgraceful that that we have not done a better job with regard, if you're talking about Wall Street, and not done a better job reining in some of the bad actors and actions that are allowed to happen up there. And there's a lot of people that say that we're heading back down that road again, and that we're in some kind of a false bubble right now. So I agree with you, and I think that we obviously have to do a lot better for Main Street as opposed to Wall Street. I think that it just goes to show you how powerful that lobby is, though, in Washington, D.C., that after that foreclosure crisis that we've had here and across this country, that very little has changed since then. Basically, it was just the market correcting that stopped it, but I think the practice hasn't. Dodd-Frank has a lot of flaws to it. I know that there's a good intention. No. Yeah, it should be fixed.
Hi, thank you for being here, Congressman. What I'd like to ask, and what I think would help reunite us, and I'll take a segment from this gentleman's question. When you had your son come up and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and you obviously are trying to be a good role model, I think we all need to think about doing that and showing the next generation how to behave. Now, in regards with this, I see Jeff Sessions as not being a good role model here. This man has lied, and he is the director and in charge of our law enforcement. You cannot start off a tenure lying. This man needs to be prosecuted, and he needs to be out. And I'd like to know what you think about that.
The question was with regard to Sessions and whether or not what he said under oath in front of the committee that he did not have discussions with anybody from Russia. He qualified that, I think, by saying as part of the campaign, but I agree with you that he should have been more clear in answering that question by saying at all. Now, let me just say this. We meet with Russian ambassadors and ambassadors in Washington all the time. I have met with the Russian ambassador. Does that make me guilty of something? But Jeff Sessions, look, I don't know Jeff Sessions. I don't know anything about him. I know that he was not confirmed for a judge a long time ago, but was unanimously confirmed this time. But I will just say that I believe that, you know, if you sit on the committees that he sits on, your exposure to the Russian ambassador is going to be frequent. Ethan, give her a follow-up.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it would help reunite the country if we started off with high ethics. This man has not started with a high ethical level. And I think we need to have, from the president down, people with high ethics in these positions. So if they start off lying, you're going to make the division greater. Now, you would not promote lying for your son. Obviously, you're bringing him here to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I really respect that. I would like to be able to respect my president, my attorney general, and everyone he has put in office, and I do not.
High ethics too. I brought him here not to just do the pledge, but you know, to see what this is all about. What we do in this country. Sean, none of these people are voting for me. If you haven't figured that, there might be a handful of people here that support me. Oh, there you are. Oh, thank you. Max.
Yes, back to the Russian issue,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. The issue is, and I have something prepared, but in advance of that, the issue is that these people from the campaign were meeting at the Republican National Convention. It is known that Flynn actually did call the ambassador, Kisilov, I think his name is, and did, in fact, discuss sanctions. That's why he resigned. We're not talking about you personally meeting with an ambassador as part of your job, but the issue is it was done as part of the Trump campaign, and that's where that's the issue. I'd like to read this to you. This is a request to you. In 2008, Senator McCain told Americans that Russia is the biggest threat to our democracy. He has been proven to be correct. The threat, however, is not military. The biggest threat to our democracy is Russia's cyber war on the mindset of America. Russia has mastered the art of cyber war, and American democracy is one of its victims. By creating doubt and mistrust, our core democratic principles, Russia has seriously interfered with our elections. Some of our leaders some of our leaders have fallen prey to the Putin plan for chaos. Do not, Mr. Rooney, allow yourself to fall prey to diversionary tactics which serve only to create chaos. Focus on the real threat to the very core of our democracy, the Russian connections. I urge you, Mr. Rooney, as a member of the House of the Intelligence Committee, to focus on the Russian influence on our democratic process and to call for an independent special prosecutor in this investigation.
I was with you until the last sentence. That should count for something though, because I'm on the committee that investigates this. Saying that we need a special prosecutor is me telling you that I can't do my job. Okay? Am I going to stand up here and say that? If we are looking at the evidence. We are looking at everything that woman, by the way, said up until that last part was pretty accurate. So we are looking into whether or not there were crimes committed. We are looking at whether or not there was actual discernible coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether or not it affected the election, and we have not found any such evidence. What you said about Flynn, I disagree with a little bit, because what Flynn was doing, which was wrong, according to this Logan Act, and also lying to the vice president, was that what he said was that he was telling him not to do anything with regard to Obama's sanctions, that we'll fix that later. That has nothing to do with coordinating in a campaign. That has to say, like, what the Logan Act says is that I'm representing the United States government and I don't have the, bona fides to do that yet because he wasn't in office yet. So that's what the violation was. And then he told Mike Pence that he didn't do that. I do know it. I heard the phone call. Okay, next question. But 90% of what you said I agree with.
You know the
And if we feel like
suppress the Democratic ask for any subpoenas. You're lying to us. You know the Republicans.
Sir, I can't hear you. I'm just waiting for you to stop.
I know you.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Yeah, that's because you don't want to hear.
Raise your hand, please. Okay, one of these guys get back there. No, Max, don't punish the person that wasn't screaming crazy until she's done, and then we'll go back and get them. If I feel like, yeah, you are, because we have a process that is trying to be calm and orderly, and you're just shouting out like you're better than everybody here. You're not. Okay. Let me just finish this with the Russian issue, if I could. If I feel like at any time there is either a crime that's been committed or that the partisanship somehow becomes evident on the Intelligence Committee that we can't function, then I will agree with you. We will have to move outside of those doors. We're not there yet. I hope we never get there, because that is doing your job.
Hi, my name is Phil Spezia. I live here in Englewood. Moved here 2 years ago from New York. Glad to be here. While I was online to get in, some of the ladies I overheard, were saying, I wonder if anybody's here that agrees with them. I voted for you. I'm one of the 20% that gave you a cushion. My question is, the people here obviously are not happy with you. Do you have the resolve to go back to Washington tomorrow, I understand, and carry through with the platform you ran on, and whatever it takes to solve the problems as you see them? That's my question.
Thank you.
Have resolve.
Appreciate it. I think you vote, you do what you think is right, and you vote the way that you think is best for your district. All politics is local. A good Democrat said that, Tip O'Neill, a long time ago. And you try, that's what I said. And you try to best represent your district, but you do have your own predispositions. And I consider myself right of center. I thought I was a pretty conservative guy until I got elected, and then I became a rhino somehow immediately. But by the way, how many people think that I'm a conservative? How many people think that I'm a rhino? That's like a Republican in name only. Like, it is important. It is important. I think it goes to show that, you know, to answer the question, I don't like to pigeonhole myself. I try to do what's right. So, but, you know, by and large, I grew up with Ronald Reagan as my president. My first job out of college was I worked for Senator Connie Mack from Florida. And I didn't know if I was a Republican or Democrat then, but I worked in his mailroom and had to read his letters like often you send. And we had, you know, responses that the senator would dictate to us. And I found myself agreeing with his responses to the people's problems in Florida or questions. And so I decided that if I agreed with Senator Mack and I liked Ronald Reagan, then I'm probably a Republican. And then when I first registered for to vote, it was as a Republican. Next. Hey, Ethan, can you?
My name is Karen Walters. I'm an Episcopal priest. And I must say, you've really done a nice job. And I really am pleased to see how you've worked with the community here. Thank you. And my question, are you willing to say no to the push by the Koch brothers and others to defund programs that benefit women, children, the arts, and the environment?
I like women, I like children, I like the arts, although I'm not artistically inclined. I took Sean to see the Lumineers last night, and I like the environment. So I don't know what specific programs you're talking about by the Koch brothers. Oh. Yeah, look, if you want to know how I vote, I don't look at what the Koch brothers are telling me to do when I vote. The way that I vote is that we go over to the house from our office building, and these guys that work for me give you the groups that are at home that are supporting and opposing, not the Koch brothers. It doesn't have anything to do. One thing that I hope that has come through since I've been here is that if you fall victim to the Washington, D.C. think tanks that raise a lot of money off people by basically saying, donate now, donate now. Are you sick of Obama? Donate now. Are you sick of Trump? Donate now. You guys will be donating until you turn blue, but what really matters is what you say and what you collectively say. If I have the Englewood Chamber of Commerce saying that this bill really is going to hurt us, that means a heck of a lot more to me than some Washington, D.C. think tank. If you're asking about Planned Parenthood, I'm pro-life. I always have been. And so I believe that as long as there apparently are 20 other women's clinics compared to the one that does perform abortion that don't, the federal taxpayers, look, ladies and gentlemen, I respect you if you're pro-choice. I'm not mad at you for it. It's okay. It's fine. But I'm pro-life, and I don't think it's right for federal tax dollars to go towards that participation. We're talking about the Hyde Amendment. It says no tax dollars will go to abortion. I agree. I'm happy about that. But when you have all the money going to one place, you have all the money going to one place. Ethan, next question.
Hi, my name is Sandra Glover from Port Charlotte, Florida. My question to you is, I'm 60, almost 63 years old, and I've never seen our country in such a divide as it is right now. My question is not only to you, but all of the congressmen and the senators on both sides of the aisle. When are you all going to stand up for the people that you all are working for and help put this country back together in a united form?
Thank you, Sandra. I agree with your sentiment. I agree with your question. I'm gonna tell you some truth right now that's not gonna be great, but it's not gonna be good for the Republicans or the Democrats. What happens in Washington, by and large, and what happens behind closed doors is exactly what you just said. We don't necessarily try all the time, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm speaking for the way that it works, and that Democrats are just as guilty as Republicans are guilty. A lot of times what we do isn't so much how to move the ball forward, or fix the problem, or govern, or solve problems. It's how are we going to make the other side look bad? Because if we do that, then maybe we can pick up a few more seats in the next election. And maybe we can pick up a few more seats in the Senate. And you know what happens? It goes on and on and on, and before you know it, a decade has gone by. And people are waiting, and they're frustrated because problems, and you might not agree with me on Social Security or abortion or whatever, but people want to see their government working. You know, you'd be surprised to know this, but I have a lot of really, really close friends on the other side of the aisle. We're with each other all day long, and we're sitting on that floor. If you ever watch C-SPAN, you'll see us sitting on that floor, and there's nobody else in the world that knows what I go through on a daily basis like another member of Congress. It doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or Republican. But when we leave each other and go our separate ways, and we go into our respective corners, the idea isn't how we're going to make Obamacare, what is our replacement going to look like? How is it going to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered? Because, come on, it's a no-brainer. Or how are we going to make sure that our public schools, some people were screaming about that, our public schools don't suck? It's a no-brainer. But a lot of times what we do is we go back in that room and be like, you know, we're going to put this vote up today that's going to be a really tough vote for the Democrats in West Virginia, or the Democrats in the Rust Belt. And when Speaker Pelosi was in charge, we would have motions to recommit, or these procedural votes that would make it very difficult for us to vote against funding veterans that have children that are trying to get back to school, or, you know, and they would put that up as a way to kill what we were doing. I'm talking in circles here, but I think you get what I'm saying, is that we make it very difficult to move the ball forward. We get into this rut of trying to move the ball backwards on the other team. And that is the norm in Washington. And that, getting back to your question, is one of the reasons why we're below Fidel Castro. I wish that I could fix that. All I can do is tell you, as my constituents, that that happens all the time. I'm tired of it.
American people will vote everybody out and start over again, because this going round and round is going nowhere.
I agree with you, Sandra, and I look. You guys don't see me on TV a lot, right? I'm not one of the talking heads that goes on Fox or MSNBC. Usually if I do go on TV, it's something that is something that I can speak intelligently to, and I'm not just going to give you talking points that my staff gave me. It's something that I can have a conversation with the person that's asking me about it. A lot of people go up to Washington to get famous. A lot of people go up to Washington on both sides of the aisle. They want to be on every show that there is. And so I think that, you know, when it comes to the end of the day, I want to know, what did I do while I was your congressman? And I hope you know it wasn't to become famous. I bet you some of the people in here didn't even know who I was 2 weeks ago. So, well, nice to meet you. But I think that at the end of the day, why we put our name on the ballot, and this is not to be hokey, but we try to make a difference. And we try to say, hey, look at this bill that I passed. Look at this thing that I was part of where we made healthcare better. Or we saved Social Security and Medicare for him. If I could do that, I would leave tomorrow knowing that I did something that was great for a generation or 2 generations. It's not to become famous. It's sure as hell not to become rich. It's to make a difference. Oh, by the way, speaking of becoming rich, for all you people that email me constantly about how I have this Cadillac healthcare plan, I'm on Obamacare. So is he. We all are, unless you're in leadership. There was no Cadillac plan for rank and file members of Congress or our staff. All the people that are working here today for me, we're all on Obamacare. So it's not like I don't have a vested interest in it being better. I'm worried about what's going to happen too. But the other thing is I also don't, I hope you believe me when I say this, I don't get paid for life for serving 1 term in Congress. I get this email all the time. It's not true. If that was the case, then I would quit and have my wife run and we get twice as much. It's not true. You're in the federal employee, if you serve 20 years, you get 3% of like your top 3 when you turn 65. That's my retirement plan. Hey, you know, I get some of these emails sometimes that I'm just like, man, how is this seen as truth? I get my mother asking me all the time too. It's like, why are you? I'm like, Mom, that is not true. Max, can you come to this aisle after this woman's question, the middle aisle?
No, all right, sure.
Yes.
Congressman Rooney, I'm Julie Peck from Venice. The appointment of Stephen Bannon as a voting member of the NSC Principals Committee is unprecedented and dangerous. He is accountable to no one, unlike the other Senate-confirmed members of the Principals Committee. And I would like to know why you will not co-sponsor or at least support H.R. 804.
Well, first of all, I don't know what H.R. 804 is. So, hey, there's 435 congressmen and they propose like 30 bills each every day. So, go ahead, thank you.
I'll tell you, it's Stephanie Brown.
Murphy. I know what it is.
You know what it is. Okay.
Go ahead, tell them what it is.
I'll read you the part that's important. What she wants to do is amend the National Security Act of 1947 to say the president may not designate any individual whose primary or predominant responsibility is political in nature to serve as a member of the council or otherwise to regularly attend or to participate in meetings of the council or meetings convened under the auspices of the council, including Principals Committee meetings.
Gotcha. Okay, I don't agree with that bill, and this is why. Look, I don't know anything about Steve Bannon. The first time I heard of Steve, I've never in my life read Breitbart. I don't know anything about him other than the fact, literally the first time I heard words come out of this guy's mouth was last week at whatever it was. That's the first time I heard his voice. To answer your question, every president in the last however many years has had members of his staff sit on the NSC. You said voting member. I've never heard that before. So I don't know what that means. They don't actually vote in there. They advise the president. So, but I would not say at the expense of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Office of the Director of Intelligence, or any of the people that are supposed to advise the president on the realities of the situations on the ground in which we are trying to keep our national security, the National Security Agency. James Baker was Reagan's chief political operative. He sat on the NSC. What happened? But to have staff sit on these meetings to help advise the president is nothing new. Now it's new because nobody likes this guy. So all of a sudden now we want to exclude one of the president's. If you just think of him as a staffer sitting in on that committee, it's really no different than it's ever been before. I don't really know what you mean by voting member.
All right, so back to this side of the room, if you'd like to stand up.
Hi, I'm Connie Harbison. I live in Fort Ogden, it's DeSoto County. And I, first of all, want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank the audience, particularly those who have maintained civility. I'm a retired teacher, and I always expected my classroom to be a rude but welcoming, I'm sorry, not a rude, polite. Well, maybe that's why I'm retired. I expected my students to practice civility and politeness, even though they disagreed. So that's the only way we can communicate well. I know we're learning that. But my topic has not been addressed today. With the exception of Native Americans, our country's entire population is literally the result of immigration. Since the legally challenged ban of anybody from certain predominantly Muslim countries, the senselessness and sheer inhumanity of even today's revised executive order has caused worldwide condemnation again, besmirching our American principles of protecting and securing refugees from inhumane leadership and cultures. Representative Rooney, do you support such a travel ban? And please explain why or why not.
I do support it. Yes. And I don't believe that it's a ban. I believe that it's a pause. Let me finish. We singled out these countries last Congress with President Obama as our president. And the reason we singled out countries like Yemen is because a lot of the countries that are on that list are failed states. We have no way to vet those refugees that you want to secure. My job is it's more incumbent upon me to maybe inconvenience them than to make sure that people in this room are secure. If I have to choose between the refugee security or yours, I have to err on the side of yours. Until I know that the person seeking refugee status is properly enough vetted that I think that they're coming into this country with the right intentions. Look, it's not a matter of Muslim or not Muslim. There are people that are coming in that are truly looking for to get out of a horrible situation in Syria. I mean, whether they're Muslim or Christian there, I mean, that country has literally fallen apart in front of our eyes in the last 2 years, plus some. So I feel for those people. I understand that they're led by a deplorable man, but man, if we don't know who they are or what their intentions are, you have to understand that I would be not doing my job if I didn't support something that said, until we know, all this is a pause for a certain finite period of time to say, can we put the personnel in place to find out? A lot of these countries don't have databases or records on the people that they supposedly govern because they don't have any money. It's actually not even really their fault either. But we can't just say, okay, well, you don't have money, there's no records on this guy, I don't have any idea, but he seems like a nice guy, and he seems like he really wants to come to America, so we're gonna let him in. It is. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, no, that's what the pause is about. Until we have the ability and the resources and the capability to know that this person coming in is not going to do us harm, then we have to err on the side of making sure of that. Well, we might be giving him the money, but clearly it's not enough if we're not sure if they can come in safely. Right. Because it's not enough. Okay. Where is... Are you guys... let's see... Man in the pink hat.
Thank the Congressman for coming. I'm sorry, my name is Bill Chambers. I live in unincorporated Venice, and I just wanted to follow up on the last thing about the immigration.
Yeah.
The UN already has a very comprehensive approach.
Sure they do. We have a lot of refugees that come here every year.
I understand that. So when I'm saying, if you look at the process that goes through in terms of people having to apply to the UN first, they have to be interviewed, they have to be investigated. You must know the process far more than I do.
Right.
But the process involves them being vetted by the UN only recommends that they even be considered for citizenship. Then they go through multiple investigations, and they go through Homeland Security checks. They go through every database that we have being checked. What I'm saying is there's already a process in place that often takes as much as 2 years for somebody to be vetted. My concern would be, as with healthcare, what is it in the next 100 days or 120 days that you think realistically could be changed, altered, improved upon, that would make up for all of this dissension and chaos that has really erupted? My concern is that so many of these little things that are really big things create an environment of a crisis mentality that doesn't exist, which forces us to kind of say, who can we trust? What can we do? Somebody fix this and help us. The Pope said it better than I can. We cannot live in this continuous call to be afraid and need to be protected. And one instance is what the UN does and our own existing process.
Okay.
But thank you for
coming. A couple things there. Great question. A couple things there. The constant living in crisis, by the way, is a really lucrative business. So if you don't think that there's money behind why we're constantly running around with our hair on fire, that's why. You can make a lot of money by scaring the hell out of people. Sending emails, doing whatever, okay? And both sides of the aisle. I'm picking on anybody. To answer your question with regard to, I think that look, if people are refugees, you're right. The last person was right. My family comes from Ireland a couple generations back because of the potato famine or whatever. So we were refugees. And so I get that. I understand that we are a country of immigrants and that that's what makes us great. But we also have to make sure that we have liberty. And if we're living in fear because we can't guarantee, at least try to guarantee the safety. And I get it. There's a 2-year process, but man, you even said it yourself. That there's databases and stuff that they check. There aren't. And until we can verify whether or not that they're coming from certain countries, there really isn't. But they're doing everything that we can. I have no problem with people coming to live the American dream and getting in line and doing it the right way. I have no problem with that. But if we can't be sure, we can't be sure. And to answer your last question, I think with regard to what will it take, I think with healthcare, were you sort of asking that? Yeah.
If we don't have databases, we have had.
Oh, you're still talking about, okay.
Well, I'm just saying that it's the notion of what all of a sudden is there going to be some magic solution.
No, there might not be. They might not just be able to come, period. Yeah, it's terrible. Last question. Max.
Hi, my name is David Matthew. I'm a recently retired colonel in the Army. I have human intelligence experience in my background, so I can talk a little bit about vetting, at least how the Army does it for our vetting that we do with people that work for us in Iraq. I will tell you the UN does a pretty good job. However, there's lots of things they don't know. For example, they take a refugee, they bring him in, and they do, over a period of time, they do multiple interviews. But they have no documentation, they have no record of his travel, they have none of his associations, because an association matrix is very important to know who that person associates with. So, we know that ISIL has actually stated its intent to use the refugee programs of the UN to actually infiltrate into Western countries. So when you state correctly, we have information, it's a packet provided by the UN, and they've done their very best to try to put it together, and they've conducted multiple interviews and tried to figure it out. But it's not a 100% guarantee, and especially until recently, we weren't even doing biometric related crossovers into the intelligence community to see if these guys have bomb-making credentials, for example. So it's very important to understand that increasing, I'm adding on here, I'm very thankful that you take that stand, because the number of refugees impacted is very small right now in these 7 nations. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Guys, I have to go. Oh yeah, I work for you. You're a gem. I work in Washington and we vote tomorrow, so I have to fly back up there to do my job. Do you want me to skip my flight and not go up to Washington to vote? That's what I was elected to do. I couldn't get out of here without my Irish coming out. Thank you. I'm going to vote tomorrow.